Now, do you have the cars or the clocks in your car reset?
Well, I was going to DC, so when I was out there,
Ah.
I changed the time.
All right, everybody, let's call to order the meeting of Finance Committee. It's March 12th. Apologies for the delay in starting. That was my mix-up in not looking at the agenda clearly. Okay, we've got a quorum present, and we're certified and compliant with open meetings laws. Got a public comment open. Anybody? Chief, Dan, anybody? All right. Then communications next.
Just an update. If you remember, about a month ago, I had told you that for whatever reason, Walmart sent an extra $156,000 to us. Well, we've discovered that they meant to, it's 154, sorry. They meant to use that for property taxes that should have been paid to the Dane County treasurer. So we had to void that check and issue a check to Dane County. So they're going to owe us the July payment for the tax increment guarantee. So I hope I don't have to withhold their liquor license again this year, but we'll see what happens.
Dave, was that why were they sending that? If that goes to the county, why would that come here? Or
there's quite a few people that don't read the instructions when it says that after January 31st, it goes to the county. So
got it.
That's a normal occurrence. Lisa in my office at that time of the year probably does 20 to 30 checks where we get paid, the check's payable to the city, so we have to cash the check and then turn it over to the county.
Got it. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for the update on that one. All right. Any other communications? All right, hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the February 27th meeting.
So moved.
So moved.
A second.
Okay, motion by Ben, second by Lisa. Any edits or questions or anything on those minutes? All right, all in favor, aye.
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 And are any opposed? All right, minutes are accepted. First bit up we've got is a resolution for fire EMS volunteer Wisconsin retirement system correction.
Is AJ in the room by chance?
Yep. I know we got a little bit of a preview or a little wind of it in personnel last week. So,
AJ, do you want to start or should I?
Do you want to go ahead and read the resolution?
Well, we don't usually read it word
okay.
for word.
I'm more than happy to just give a quick overview. I have a lot of the resolution language in here, but the City of Stoughton Finance Department reviewed a past practice in the general ledger that dates back to at least, if not before 2008. With this practice, finance combined expenditures for Social Security, Medicare, WRS, and life insurance into one general ledger account. That practice was changed in 2023 for better analysis of budget versus actual activity and separating that was required for data allocation of pension and other post-employee benefit costs as required under current governmental accounting standards. As part of that change, it was discovered that the full-time employees that work for the City of Stoughton, who also get paid as volunteers for the fire department and EMS, were not included in those volunteer wages as WRS wages. So they did not pay in and we did not pay in. The State of Wisconsin Department of Employee Trust Funds confirmed in writing to the City of Stoughton that volunteer wages for those full-time employees for both past and future are considered as WRS eligible wages. The error in reporting and the wages date back to 2008. Records are not available prior to 2008, so that's where we did our due diligence, and the cutoff was 2008. I spoke with the city's labor attorney who reviewed the statutes, and his opinion was that the employer may elect to pay part or all of the employee amounts for this liability. Our recommendation is that the city of Stoughton elect to pay the employee's portion rather than attempt to collect the portion of WRS that is due. This recommendation goes before you guys tonight, and we're asking that that be funded. The grand total is $118,190.66, and that does include interest payments as well that will be due to WRS. Dave, anything you want to add?
The only couple things to add, that 118,000 figure is just through December 31st, so we're accruing interest into 2024. The general ledger for 2023 already had included the employer contributions and interest expense. Shortly, or while we were having field work with Baker Tilly for our audit, the opinion from the attorney came in, and between discussions between AJ, the mayor, and myself, and then Baker Tilly, we all agreed it would be reasonable to have that expense booked back to 23. So the general ledger already represents that 118,000, and that's built into the numbers for the surplus or deficit for the year.
Okay, one other point, just so everybody's aware, this is the city's error. And please keep in mind that these individuals, for these quote-unquote wages, we did not know that this was due. Therefore, those that were volunteering had no clue that they would owe these dollars. So we're not talking that all of these are small amounts. As you can see, there's 118,000 due, but there's a total of 19 employees that spreads across, but only 7 of them are still active employees. 12 of them are no longer employed by the city. So to ask a volunteer who's making next to nothing at this point to come forward and have to pay for WRS is a bit of a shock, I'm guessing, to them. I just sent the letters out. I also met with the group. They did have an idea that this was occurring because we were talking about it in 2023 at the end of the year. But again, these are volunteers that are making next to nothing as a volunteer. So please keep that in mind when you vote tonight, because we strongly encourage that, because it was the city's error, that this be covered.
Where's the funds coming from, AJ?
Funds are coming from, Dave, do you want to explain what happened in 23?
They are already included as expenses in the fire department and EMS. So those numbers are reflected in the ending fund balance for both of those funds.
Dave, I'm assuming that, this isn't an option to get this corrected. This is,
No.
will incur further penalties if it's not
Yeah,
corrected.
so to answer that
Correct.
question, the decision from WRS, I've been communicating with our contact there. This is not a choice.
Yeah,
This is the city owes and the employees owe. The question is, will the city be picking up the employee's portion?
got it.
Please keep in mind, these are volunteers. These are not wages that were earned as a full-time employee. These are only the volunteer wages. And keep in mind that those wages, for those that don't understand fire or EMS, with EMS, they only get paid per call. They do not get paid per hour. And for fire, they get a stipend, and or if they're working the 12-hour duty crew, they get a set dollar amount of $15 for that entire 12 hours.
Got it. Do you have a question, Lisa?
No, I may be jumping ahead. I was just gonna move to recommend approval to council.
All right. Is there a second on that? second by Greg. Mayor, you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to take a moment to thank Director Ellinger for bringing it to our attention. Obviously, when he discovered it, there must have been a moment of, oh no. But it really says a lot about his character that he immediately brought it to our attention so we could deal with it. Also like to thank Director Gillingham for her work and research in order to get to the point where we ultimately had to make a decision on how we were going to handle this.
Yeah, it seems like this was just a good, honest mistake, and we're going to work to correct it, so.
The unfortunate part, Brett, was that going back to 2008, neither Director Alinger or myself were here.
Right.
So we were trying to just go off records, and Lisa Schimmelfinning, the director of EMS, also was going back trying to get us as much information as she knew because she was here. But we weren't able to come up with anything that would substantiate the decision that was made.
Yeah, it predates all of us. Were you even on
Yeah.
council then? Yeah, so predates all of us, but the
Right.
only thing you can do is basically self-report and correct it. So that's about all we can do. And fortunately, we're in a financial position where we can do it without impacting, any more than it already has been.
Hopefully WRS gives us some points for honesty. Sure. All right, so any other questions on this resolution? All right, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
And are any opposed?
Aye.
Yep. All right. We'll recommend that resolution to council. Mayor, is that one going to come in on time sensitive tonight?
No.
No? Okay.
We have it on for the 26th.
Got it. All right. All right. Next, we've got discussion and possible action regarding departmental reporting of fiscal activity to oversight committees and timing thereof.
If you remember at the last meeting when the Finance Committee made the recommendation to Common Council to approve the budget amendments for the deficits and overspending and expenditures, this committee asked that this topic be brought back. As requested, the mayor and I talked about possible ways going forward. And while I'll get to the BSNA example reports that I have in the packet in a couple minutes, the mayor has already talked to the largest three departments for the deficits, that being police, fire, and opera house. And if he hasn't met with them already, I know he's got one meeting set up tomorrow with the opera house. So they're, for the most part, they're taking a proactive approach, trying to correct the problems. And I'll leave it at that comment. With the reports, my suggestion is that whatever report format that you go with or whatever you recommend will do, I would think a monthly report rather than a quarterly report would be more timely, because if there's an issue, if you're waiting till the end of a quarter, now you've already lost 3 months to try and make things up for year end. But my recommendation is that the oversight committees for each one of the departments receive the reports monthly. Obviously, you can have it monthly, bi-monthly, quarterly, however you want it. But I guess I'm looking for the suggestions from you folks, what you would like to see. Tim, if you can display the packet on that first page labeled option A, please. While Tim's looking for that, I put 4 items in there. High level, they're the same reports, and I just did it for finance department just so that for consistency. So option A gives you just fewer subtotals. You basically got on the screen now. You've got totals for revenues and totals for expenditures. So the departments, once they set up the report, uh, would just basically have to say, pull up the revenue expenditure report, change it from February 29th to March 31st and run the report. So that makes it a little bit easier for them. Option B on the next page, Mayor. Uh, Same type of report, but we give more categories. And for the revenue, it's almost too many categories per se, unless you've got a lot of different things. But the advantage here is expenditures are subtotaled by wages, benefits, operational, and then capital outlay if there is some. So that gives them a little bit better idea where there are for personnel versus everything else. And again, they only have to change the report date if they want to run this. Mayor, can you go to option C, please? This report actually has more robust information showing the prorated budget and year-to-date surplus deficit. I like it, but it's actually a little bit cumbersome to do. And if you don't remember to change the totals for the calculations for the surplus deficit and prorated budget, it gives you useless data. So while I personally will be using this for myself, I wouldn't recommend it to the departments unless they feel comfortable doing it. So option A and C are similar, just subtotals for revenue and expenditures. And option D, which would be next page, please, Mayor. Again, it's got the more robust information on the side, subtotals to give you wages, benefits, and operational. But again, it's a little bit more difficult going in to change the formula every time for dates. So I don't think most departments would want to do that. One of the other things that I'd like to have some direction on is, do you want each department to kind of freeform their reports, or do you want this to be consistent so that all departments are reporting the same? So somebody who is on 2 different committees, say city clerk and finance, will see similar type reports. So I'm going to open up the floor to you folks. Well, first of all, Tim, do you have any comments that you wanted to make?
Yeah, I would say my initial discussion with the department head, what I discovered is there's a varying level of understanding of how to generate and read the reports. I think there's an opportunity there once we settle on a report to spend a little bit more time training some departments, which is typical in an organization, especially when you have people that have been on the system for longer than others. I think there's some opportunity to hopefully utilize some IT. We have some departments that are using multiple software programs, so they may be using one for accounting and a different one for timesheets, and the 2 programs are not speaking to each other, which causes some errors, and it creates challenges for tracking and analysis. So I think there's some opportunity there. I think doing quarterly, or in some cases it may be better off to do monthly, we can project and prorate the numbers a little bit differently, because what happens is in some departments, let's say you have trainings or you have turnover in the department, so you start burning up overtime so you have coverage. Well, then eventually you hire new people and they need to be trained too. But at some point you got to dial back the overtime because you've burnt that up. Even though you've saved some money on your hourly, you're not saving that money at the same pace you may be using it on overtime. So I think having, more reporting more often and having meetings with Dave and myself and the department heads, I think we can do a better job analyzing the data in real time instead of after the fact. There's going to be some things that are just going to happen. The equipment breaks, some of it's expensive, might not be a CIP item, might be an operations thing that broke unexpectedly. We can't just not fix it. But what I'd like to do is, and this is something Dave and I have to talk about, is instead of waiting until year end or after year end to do the budget adjustments, maybe we do a series of adjustments throughout the year. So then at least there's an awareness of what's going on, and it's not, it feels more proactive that way, and instead of saying, well, okay, we spent all this money and it's too late to do anything about it, or maybe if something broke, maybe something else could have been deferred. Or we could come back and do a budget amendment, and maybe now it became a CIP item instead of an operations item, or whatever happens. So I do think there's some opportunities in there with a little bit more discussion. Now that we're, knock on wood, AJ's filled all the positions forever, I think that'll help too, is we've all been stretched really thin, but now that we have additional staffing in finance and some of the other departments we've been running short, I think we can maybe, get back to routinely reviewing the data.
Yeah, just looking through the four options here, C and D to me, well, they require 2 extra steps, and I just don't like the idea of adding steps. Not that they're going to happen, but it does open the door for errors. But the thing I do like about them is that it has fewer subtotals. So a little bit easier to read. But I don't know. Even with that, though, I think either A or B would be the one for my choice.
Lisa, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess my first thought is, ultimately the leadership team is going to be the most accountable. So I would say whatever is going to be easiest for them. And it sounds like maybe A might be that choice, but, it's great if it works for us to review, but it really needs to work for the leadership team.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I would, if they're comfortable with A, I'd support that. Whatever works to kind of help manage the budget and make it less cumbersome for them. It would be my choice, I guess.
All right. Ben, you have any thoughts on it?
Dave, you mentioned a one that you preferred. I didn't quite catch it. What was the one you preferred?
Well, for myself, I would be switching between C and D.
B?
Just because sometimes D with the subtotals for wages and benefits is more helpful, but other times I don't need that subtotal, so I go back and forth. That's an easy change. You just click something on or off. The issue with C or D is for prorated budget, you've actually got to go in and change the formula saying it's always, for February, for instance, it's divide by 12, multiply by 2. For March, you've got to change it for divide by 12, multiply by 3. Same concept with the year-to-date surplus deficit. You've got to change that formula again. It's not always the easiest to remember, and if people are not confident in their abilities, they may feel that that's an extra step that they don't want to do. So for that reason, I would recommend either A or B for the individual departments. Like I said, there's some departments, info media services, they obviously are comfortable with computers. They may want to use the more robust version, but I'm going to leave that up to the departments.
As far as I'm concerned, just leave it up to them, let them make the decision, and, you know.
Yeah, so-
Let staff make the decision on which ones are gonna be most comfortable and easiest for them to work, and because it's, you know, all we do is look at the end result, period, so I don't see a problem with it.
Yeah, and just a couple other thoughts. You know, I think what we've tried to do is really tighten up the budget the last few years, and it looks like we got a little bit too tight. But it's also an opportunity for us to get better at what we do. We do have our next leadership meeting is coming up on, I think it's March 27th. So that's when we get everyone together. We do that monthly, and this would be an item on the agenda for everybody. So I think that we can give some examples to the group, you know, set up some dates for training and additional conversations, and then, you know, get this thing rolled out here right away in second quarter.
I guess my thoughts on it were, I could go with either option A or B. I didn't really have any preference as to either one of them. I think that works out. Certainly monthly, because I think, Mayor, like you said, you know, it's more like a real-time budgeting than it is trying to catch up on things instead. I mean, I think that's well worth doing. And I would prefer to have it as uniform reporting across the departments. That way there isn't, you only have to train once in one way. You don't have any ambiguity as far as what reports are coming in from where, and everybody just gets used to doing the same thing. So you almost have interchangeability in that way. And then we see the same reporting each time too. So it's, you know, a little easier for us to collate that.
Well, I appreciate the feedback. Sorry I wasn't here at the last meeting, but certainly, you know,
No worries.
getting your thoughts is helpful as we have our conversations with the rest of the team.
I mean, it might, you know, of course, it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve in order to get to that point where, you know, it's nice and smooth, but the end product, I think, is going to be well worth that. I mean, that'll funnel into when we're doing CIP and budgeting. So I think just as everybody just gets used to it, that's it. All right, anybody have any other thoughts on that discussion point?
I guess I would just, as Brett had given us his opinion on consistency, but the other committee members didn't mention that topic.
I think once a month, and I would also agree that everyone using the same option makes the most sense. So monthly, everyone using either A or B.
Yeah, I would agree.
All right, Greg agrees too, so
Thank you,
is
everyone.
that enough guidance, Dave?
I think so. So Tim and I can continue the conversation. We've already got, like I said, a couple of the larger departments have asked for more training on the BSNA system, which we're glad to do. The more they get familiar with it, the easier it's going to be for them.
All right. Anybody have any final thoughts on that one? All right. Dave, do you think we have enough time for going through reports and finish the last two items?
Given the later start, I'd recommend that we jump to number 10.
Okay, I was leaning toward recommending that myself, but we'll just look at quite a number of reports in the next meeting. So Everybody all right with bypassing reports? All right, we got nods here, so we're all good. So we'll move into the discussion and possible action regarding municipal courts receivables and related debt collection policy.
Okay. The first page that the mayor's got up on his screen is current year. And I did a little bit more robust reporting of aging to see where it's at. I noticed that we've got 38 outstanding receivables that are old enough to vote. We've got 2 receivables that are at $5,000 each that I don't know the status of. We have a large number of claims that are less than $50, and the state debt collection service that we use doesn't take claims under $50. So, just looking at that screen, I've got less than 50. If I can add it up quick in my head, you're looking at about 4,500 claims. That's a lot of claims out there. So I guess I want to start the conversation with what type of, how do you want us to kind of go forward on this? Are there certain classes of claims that you automatically want us to pursue? For instance, operating while intoxicated. Or are there some that you say you do not want to pursue? A parking violation. Maybe you want to pursue speeding. Do you want to say we're not going to deal with anything over 10 years old and we're just going to write it off? Again, I'm just throwing out things here, but considering the fact that we've got about $450,000 out there with a large, I don't even have the count in front of me, but there's a lot of claims there, and I'm looking for some direction what you as the finance committee would like us for pursuit. And I'm not looking for a final answer today, I guess more thinking about it and get back to me or discuss it today, whatever you want to do. But like I said, I'm looking for guidance here. And Jenny, I know you did a lot of cleanup at your prior employer with the courts receivable. Is there anything that you wanted to add on this topic?
I don't think so. I mean, I just cleaned up the general ledger between things. So I worked with the new court clerk we had and our prior court clerk who was there for a long time. So, I mean, they had a pretty good handle from my understanding of items. So I guess I don't know, specifically what they necessarily had out there for receivables because the court department handled all of that. We just would, I just deposited the cash and I would just reconcile the account. I mostly worked with restitution to clean that up. So, yeah, they worked with SDC and TRIP and all that stuff to try and get, items paid. So, yeah, I don't know how it works here, but.
Thanks, Jenny. One thing to update the committee, we're kind of in a transition at this point. We know the current Judge Rothy, is planning on leaving at the end of his term, so he'll be leaving us in April. While we have not been given any specific notice, I have heard conversation that our court clerk, Mary Giesma, would like to retire after a month or two, getting the new judge up to speed. So by say June 1, we're going to have a entirely new court system. So it's going to be a lot for them to learn and figure out. So I'm not sure how much they're going to be able to assist in the process, at least for their first 6 months or so. So it's not like I can just assign it to them and say go, because they're going to have their own duties. So, Tim, is there anything that you wanted to add? Otherwise, I'm going to open up the floor to the committee for conversation on this topic.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is, some of these, are, just to put it bluntly, are going to be uncollectible. We have some individuals that are frequent flyers. It's been going on, as Dave mentioned, for years. And, unfortunately, there's ways that the system can be worked. And that happens often where, you try to collect, go to court, they're given time, don't meet it, try to collect, go to court, wash, rinse, repeat.
Yeah.
Different judges in some cases. So it's a difficult process to collect. And I think the key thing for me is to understand from you all, how much time you want us to invest and where our priorities should be, because some of it probably isn't going to be worth chasing. There's might be some opportunities in there, and maybe we can try to identify them. I think Dave, said there's quite a few that are under $50. Well, if we spend an hour on it, we lose basically, and people know that too.
Yeah.
And then some of the higher ones that have been going on for years, I just really don't see a path to collect some of that. We can certainly sit down with city attorney and maybe get their opinion on some of them. They're familiar with some of the individual cases. But oftentimes, folks that owe us money owe other people money too, based on what I've seen, and I don't know the full scope of it all, but I know enough examples to know that. So I don't know what your expectations are, but at some point I almost feel like we need to reboot and write stuff off more often. I mean, we do that in utilities. We do that. We used to do that when, with the personal property tax. I kind of feel like in some cases, this is kind of the same. We've just been accumulating it year after year and not making progress on some of it. But we might be able to at least see if there's any money that's been collected from some of these categories, and if not, I think we should really take a hard look on that, on whether we want to spend any more resources in those particular cases.
Lisa?
I had a couple questions. Maybe it was in the packet, but I missed it. Does it say, two questions. Is there a spot that tells us what these are for? Because I would be interested in that in case we wanted to prioritize. But also, do we work with a collection agency on these sorts of things, or who's responsible for collecting them?
Well, I'll answer the first part. The collection agency that I'm aware of that we work with is the State Debt Collection Service, which is a division of the Department of Revenue. And they've got more robust collection methods than any accredited collection agency out there, because they can do tax liens and everything like that. When I was at the the clerk courts in Milwaukee County, as you can imagine, there's a lot of outstanding receivables there. So I worked with a collection agency there outside of TRIP or the State Collection Service. So we've got options out there if we want to sic somebody else out there. And I apologize, you asked a two-part question, and I cannot think of the second part now.
Well, I just wondered if it's in our packet, or if maybe we could get it at a future meeting. I'd be interested to know what these fines are for.
The report that I get from them, and it's a lengthy report, some of them you can easily tell, they're OWIs, but for good or bad, the case number is based upon the ticket that's in the ticket book that the officers are writing from. And they get their ticket books from different vendors, so you can't tell most of the case types without going into the municipal court system to see what it's for. As a point of information, sometime in the past year, I had requested access to that system with Judge Rothy, and he did not give it to me because the statutes indicate that juvenile cases are restricted access, which I completely understand. So that would make it harder for us to determine case type. I could certainly include it in the packet for next time. It's probably about a 60-page report, but
maybe
it'll
not
give you an
then.
idea of the case volume out there.
And then one final question, do you know what percentage of dollars we are collecting on average, or like what we actually bring in?
Well, the revenue that we get for our share is reported as income to the municipal court system. So we can tell what we have brought in. But unfortunately, the data that we have when we're given it doesn't tell me if these are 1 month old, 2 years old, 5 years old, that sort of thing. And you did ask a question recently about this topic. Who's responsible for collection? I don't know. The courts issue or the police department issues the citation. The courts convict as appropriate, and then collection, I don't know. Should it be the courts? Should it be finance? When I worked in Milwaukee County, or a county government, at every county that I worked with, the clerk of courts there was responsible for collections. And I'm not saying that the courts don't work on collections, because I know they submit things through tax refund intercept program and the state debt collection service. So it's not like they aren't trying, but I think that's more for the daily things. I don't believe, and I could be wrong, but I don't believe that they look at past due items and see what we can do to collect.
I think some of the larger ones too are related to zoning as well. Is that included in here?
They would be in there, yes.
Yeah, so a lot of them have to do with minimum maintenance standards or ongoing issues with contractors or homeowners or business owners.
If they've got that outstanding, they shouldn't be getting a new permit, right?
Correct, except there's no real communication between the court system receivables and the rest of the city. So, and I'm going from absolute memory, but I don't believe the data report that I get even shows names on it. So when, yes, our city ordinance says planning department won't issue a building permit until all things are paid for, or they don't get a liquor license. But there's no easy way to communicate that with the court.
Yeah, and I know that's something that we had a meeting on, and I think that there is an opportunity there to maybe have some reoccurring meetings between, it might be planning, it might be finance, it might be courts, it might be the PD. We have to figure that out. And I think long term, that's probably the direction we're going to have to go, is really have a system where we can collaborate within the laws, basically. And so everybody really kind of understands who's doing what and who owes what and what our tools are to try to collect. And like I said, at some point, if we decide that we're not going to be able to collect, then, you know, that person is on a permanent list or whatever, and we move on. I mean, you see that like on the Wisconsin delinquent taxpayers list. You go on there and there's certain individuals or businesses that are really no longer to do anything business related because they've basically been banned because they haven't paid their debt. And maybe we try to learn more about that model and see if we can use it here locally.
Yeah, and I don't want to get off on a tangent, but I know Randy and I, before he left, had conversations about a particular person who seemed to be involved in multiple projects, all that were violating, zoning and, hadn't paid fees. And so definitely some sort of central database of some sort and communication would probably be a good way to start, so.
I think we have some gaps that we can certainly fill in this process. I mean, at least seeing what it is first, I think helps us out, and at least knowing what the scope of the issue is. Dave, if we could see, or, just send us that report that has a little bit more granular data in there, and maybe if we just look at it for a couple of weeks here, and maybe we can come up with at least a quick set of criteria maybe that we could get some of this to fall off, but I think certainly the larger issue in there is getting the communication among the departments and see how we can collectively attack it.
Okay, I will send that document out as of December 31st. I don't think it matters if you get December data or February data. The concept is still the same.
Right. So I'm just assuming that the reports, the high-level reports you have here are just pivot tables off of that bigger
Correct.
report? Okay.
Correct.
All right, so there's some, we'll be able to find some granularity behind it, so we'll look through it. All right.
That'll be some exciting reading to have at night to put you to sleep.
Fantastic. More and more and more, just lots of numbers. All right, anybody have any other thoughts on that? We'll just kind of look it over based on that report that we'll get, and maybe come up with a few guidelines to get us at least moving forward in it. All right, so last item we've got is discussion and possible action regarding the special assessment policies.
Well, now that we kind of opened that can of worms last week, we had some internal conversations via email. And I don't know if Brett's in the audience right now tonight. I know he's not online, but I thought he brought up some good potential changes, especially about the city's practice is for ADA related items that we paid for those in full, although the policy doesn't state it. So my recommendation is that we do put that in the policy. And he also discussed taking the curb and gutter charges out of an assessable item, which I think the public would welcome. And as he indicated, it's basically to help stormwater flow. So that would be something that benefits the city more than the individual. So that might be something that we want to discuss at a meeting going forward. For my input on the topic, right now the interest rate hasn't changed in at least a decade. So what we're charging the people is less than prime. So yeah, they're actually getting a loan from us, and use the value of the money. So we probably want to index the interest at a certain point. The other thing that we should discuss is the fund balance in special assessment. it's been growing. It was over 600,000, and I'm going from memory, it's about 400,000 at year end 23. But we don't have a fund balance policy for how much we want to keep in there, 3 months worth of expenditures, 1 year's worth. That's something that I'd like the committee to start discussing. Because potentially we could use that fund balance to lower the percentage that we charge to the property owner. Instead of 50-50, maybe it's 60-40, just throwing out numbers. The only problem with using fund balance is once that fund balance disappears, now you're going to have to go back to the 50% or whatever it is. So that's a tool to use to help lower it, but eventually you have no fund balance left to do it over your policy. So it's not that we have a lot of time left tonight for discussion, but those are the points that I wanted to bring up and have the committee start talking about it or start thinking about it, how we want to go forward. My personal feeling is if we change the percentage to a lower percent, we are going to have people complaining who had to pay the higher percentage in the past. We're not going to be able to get around that, but you will hear that discussion. But right now, I do not have a specific percentage that I am recommending. I'm just looking for input from you folks. And I know this topic's been on the agenda for probably a year. So I don't know if anybody's been thinking about it, but in the 7 minutes that we've got left, we can discuss it.
Lisa, you want to lead us off?
Yeah, I know we're running out of time, but I didn't want to forget, one of the things that I had been chatting with Rodney about in years past is they always seem to run short on sidewalk repair funds. So I'm just wondering if that extra fund balance, if we might want to consider using that for the general good of the city. I know in my district, I hear from a lot of people. I'm close to Scotland, so there's a lot of people in walkers, and we have a lot of cracked sidewalks, and we always run out of money to repair those. So maybe it would be worthwhile to put a little money toward the sidewalks that we always seem to be patching from year to year. So that's just one thought for us to consider in the future.
Okay.
Dave, how many years back do we have, like what the assessment fund balance is as compared to what are or the cost of the assessments being done? How many years back?
I've got data going back to '08, so I
Okay.
can certainly get that information calculated out for you going
Okay.
forward, or
Is
going
this-
back, I should say.
At least for that one, you could probably, at least with the fund balance, where you could get it to settle in and maintain a certain like safety level, like you were saying, by whatever month's worth of cost is required out of it, or some factor like that. But this is like this is a min-max problem, so we got to dust off calculus books for it. So, but I
I'm
think you
not
could.
doing derivatives.
I think you could find a point in here where I think that would balance, where you'd maybe like waffle around that set point that we have in there, so that, let's see, so that you don't want to have like, maybe you could go to a 60-40 split in there, and you could probably find a comfortable space in there where you're not going to deplete your fund balance down very quickly, or maybe even to a certain safety level. So I guess just ideas that we can have with that, but we'll have to ponder on it a little bit. But I did like Brett's ideas in there for sure. I think that those are certainly worth investigating with that. We should definitely index the interest rate to something, then at least we have a reason for where it is instead of arbitrary reasoning. And we should certainly get something in policy, written out in policy as kind of a ceiling and a floor for this fund balance in there. I mean, we've got it for a whole other, or plenty of other fund balances, so I don't see why that wouldn't apply to this one as well.
Actually, we've only got a fund balance policy for the general fund.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, great.
To me, it would make sense to
Okay.
pay the interest rate to the latest bond rate paid by the city. I don't know if that would be burdensome or
Well, we do that
if
every
we would
year.
base
That's
it
not,
more on a.
the
Go ahead.
only, I think we'd have to, if we're gonna go that route, we'd have to say the true interest cost for the bond, because if we do say a 10-year bond, you might have interest rates that change every year on those 10, so you gotta kind of average it out. But that true interest cost calculation is done by Ellers, so that wouldn't be hard to locate at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think that sounds really reasonable. Everybody expects a floating interest rate anyway. We're used to that, so. All right, anybody have any other thoughts on this one? We'll kind of chew on this one for a little bit too. All right, that runs us through our business at hand. We've got things in the future agenda items, but those are we're getting through them, Dave.
I'd
Getting
move to
through, and I
adjourn.
added a few, so.
All right, Lisa has a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Second by Greg. Any other questions or? All right, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Right.
And any opposed?
Thank you, everyone.
All right, meeting's adjourned. Thanks.